Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History Spiritual Quest. We're in Chapter 12 of the Impersonal Life and moving our way through to the end. And we're going to do that as soon as we come back from this song. Hi, Big Money Mike. Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. This is Cross on the Circle.
He saw the cross at dawn and said, "It's a good omen, and a dream again." At the break of dawn, through the window pane, he saw a cross in morning rain, white as grace, tall as prayer, calling him to build and share. Not a kingdom, not a throne, but a place of love alone, where laughter rides on horse's breath and peace outshines the fear of death. Come home to the circle and the sign, where the lake reflects the holy line. No one needs money, no one needs fame, just a handshake and a name. Come home where the cross stands tall. Come and share the love of all. Mobile homes and barbecue nights, trucks and trowel and porch light rides, the hand-picked heart to share the dream, a mythic village by the stream. This is more than land, it's grace, refuge carved in sacred space, a gift of love to friends and kin, protected from the world's loud din. Come home to the circle and the sign, where the lake reflects the holy line. No one needs money, no one needs fame, just a handshake and a name. Come home where the cross stands long. Come and share the love of all. Oh, come and share the love of all.
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today we do have more echoes from Elvis Presley. But let's start with our equations at a glance, so that as we dive back into the impersonal life, we can carry some of these with us and look for the resonance that's in the text. And right now we're in a chapter that talks about soulmates, and it's trying to tell us that sometimes the challenging person is the right person, not the comforting person. And it's got a lot of other embedded messages. But I think we should look at number 3 on the first column, the third down, it says, I am God equals love. That is the key to the whole book. Everything is filtered through that passage. I am God equals love. So as we read through these harsher passages, we should always remember that that is the center of the book. So as we see harshness, we have to reevaluate it through I am God equals love. And let's go ahead and dive into the book itself. And this is the paragraph that we're at. It says, for not until this sorrowing, fettered soul, this angel from heaven, and it's talking about your spouse, is what the chapter has brought forward. It says mate. You know, your mate's not exactly your spouse. It's not exactly the same word. So we should probably note that. I don't think he's said the word spouse anywhere in this chapter. But it feels like we've been led to believe that it's spouse. But it says, for not until this sorrowing, fettered soul, this angel from heaven, this other part of my and your self, and that's because we're all divine shards. We're wrapped in a soul body, which is perfect. And then that soul body is replicated here on earth in mortal form, and it is imperfect. And everything we experience here is imperfect. But in the center of it all, we are divine shards. So we're all pieces of God, and that's why the text is saying, my and yourself. It's using the word angel from heaven, not to mean that this is a sweet and nice person, but that this person has been sent by God with a mission. Now, a true angel understands the mission. They know they're on the mission. They're consciously serving it. This sorrowing, fettered soul is someone that's inside a personality. And the personality is like a mask that we wear. It's many, many layers. And in this case, this person is sorrowing and fettered, which means they're probably not aligned. This book is all about alignment, and when you're aligned, you're able to see God, or you at least know God is in this direction. Although your own fog that you create yourself with your own personality may blind you to seeing God, it may stop you from hearing. That's why you've got to be still and know I am God. Those are Joseph Benner's instructions for stop all external stimuli. In other words, maybe you close your eyes, maybe you hold your hand over your ears, but you stop taking in external stimuli. You surrender to the moment and you be still. You don't move around. You try to hear God. And that's meditation or prayer. And in prayer, I think they're saying you should start talking, and that's what opens the conduit. That if you can't hear, talk for a little bit, but then be silent and listen. And sometimes that helps you. It's like a ritual that activates the conduit. That's what rituals are. They bring you into a state of mind so that you can reach this inner peace, so that you can speak with the I am who lives in your heart. And that's the same as the Christian Jesus who lives in your heart. And it says, for not until this sorrowing, fettered soul, this angel from heaven, So this divine shard who is masked in a personality and is at this moment unaligned or tends to fall into misalignment. We don't want to judge this other soul, but they're having troubles. That they're truly being sent by God. That's the angel from heaven part. And that this other part of my and yourself, this is to remind you that they're one of us. They're one of the divine shards who has come to you and is beating its wings against the barred cage of its personality in which you are helping to keep it locked. So there is this mask of personality. In this instance, instead of acting as a shield or a sword in the current world to keep us safe, it's become a prison, keeping this divine shard from seeing God or the I am in their heart. It's keeping them from finding alignment. And we are strengthening that cage. We're adding bars to it. We're putting more locks on it because we're reinforcing their misalignment. Now, it's told us earlier that this particular form of reinforcement is our own irritation and anger. That they reflect things of ourselves back at us. And we believe we're further up the spiritual spiral than what's being reflected, and we become angry about it. And they see that anger, and their personality, it leaps to grab that anger and to use it to strengthen itself. That's what's happened. We reinforced the personality with the anger. The personality knows it's got something it can latch onto to help keep its divine shard in the dark. And it's not doing that because it's evil. It's doing that because it's terrified that the divine shard will find alignment. And something in the experience that this divine shard has had here in this realm of earth has convinced the personality that the person's going to collapse into themselves if they don't keep them safe. And that means not letting them see this alignment. That's why it's so twisted. Your personality is like a film strip. The light's supposed to shine through, the light of love that God sends you. And then it projects out. Others can see, they can feel, they can live the film strip, and they can incorporate it into themselves. And at this time, you're shining that strip or some of those cells onto this other, the mate, and it's reinforcing their misalignment. That means your film strip is flawed. Something about it is twisted. It's not a moral issue. It's an artistic issue. You've got to shape the film strip until it shows the divine attribute that you were sent here to show. It's coming through because that's why this particular soul is beating against its cage in front of you. It's gotten all the way to you. It's seen the light of your lantern. But then you've given it these mixed messages when it got there. And that's because we are divine shards. We can't hold the full truth of the divine. And therefore, we can't necessarily show the right message until we've crafted it correctly with the help of the divine. That's what your life is. It's the crafting of this message. And so this goes on and it says, while it all the time is yearning and striving to call into expression through you the impersonal love the tender, thoughtful care for others, the poise of mind and peace of heart, the quiet, firm mastery of self, which alone can strike off the fetters. And Gunn is asking, what is Joseph's shortened message so far in this chapter? So I think that the message here is that it's about pattern recognition. The whole book, in a way, is about pattern recognitions. So there are a lot of patterns in our life. The spiral is one of them. And this is a particular pattern that we have when we interact with other people. I think it's using the word mate in order to bring this to the very closest interaction most of us ever have with another person. And therefore, it's a model for all other interactions. And the pattern is that if you have a lantern of faith, which we all have, but many people, it's shuttered or the flame is very dim. So if you have one where the flame is strong, which was is the mission that Christ is giving in the book of John, which is you are to go forward and basically speak the word, but that's hold your lantern forth so that others can find their path. It's not to dictate a path for others. It's to show that faith will open the path. So you're holding forth this lantern, and maybe your faith is strong and you've been alone on this journey. You don't even realize that you're holding forth this lantern. And these people are coming to you because they see it. And then you are in ways, if you're not recognizing that you are at that moment a shepherd, that you've transitioned from just a person who is talking to another to someone who is drawing in people who are trying to find the light. I think we could think of Elvis in this moment. People express this as love. It seems that females, especially when he was young, felt it the most strongly. But by the end of his career, people are flocking to Elvis because he has some kind of message that other artists don't have. And we've talked about that being the love that he sends forth into the audience, and that he receives back from it. And in that interpersonal interaction, there is certainly a danger of reinforcing each other's misalignment. That's what this chapter was talking about. When you find someone that you're very comfortable with, someone who says, oh, everything you say is correct, that leads you both into a satisfaction that probably isn't going to drive you forward spiritually. Now, is it talking about all kinds of satisfaction? No, this is a text about spiritual life. It's only about spiritual life. So the pattern that's to be recognized here is that if you see that someone's coming to you because they're seeking spiritual enlightenment and you wish to interact in that, you've got to be very careful. And it's trying to give you, I think, the guidelines and, the rules of the road. What does this painted line on the road mean? Why do we have these curbs? Should I steer my car anywhere? No, it's teaching you that you've got to be very careful because now you're interacting with another divine shard and you already know the issues your own divine shard has, or that the personality wrapped around it has, might be a better way to put it. I think that's what the chapter is trying to get across to us. And it says, while it all the time is yearning and striving to call into expression, this it is the angel, the other, the one that's been sent to you so that you can learn to be gentle and careful with these fragile other beings. That when you feel this irritation and this anger, that's a sign this is the pattern. And so when they've come to you, striving to call into expression through you the impersonal love, they see in you a way to unity. Impersonal here means, just like the title of the book, that it's not personal, it's not part of the personality. It's not a bad thing. Neither is personal in this book. They're just two sides of a coin. The personal is what we need here in order to complete the mission. It's the filter of the light of the undifferentiated impersonal love. The impersonal love is the divine love, all of it coming through in a bright white light. So this other person, you've been shining forth your film strip, they're picking it up, and they're picking up these huge portions of impersonal love that is shining through the blank spots on the strip. The confusion is in the actual message in the picture that you put onto the strip. It's not quite right. And it keeps reinforcing something in their own personality. But it's really close, because that's why they're coming. They see your lantern. And it says the tender, thoughtful care for others. They see you are this tender, thoughtful person. The poise of mind and the peace of heart. They see it coming through the film strip, but it's not the message that you're giving. And so they're confused about it, but that's what's brought them. And that's what's causing this interpersonal issue with you. You're picking it up and sending it back as aggression. The quiet, firm mastery of self, which alone can strike off the fetters and open the doors. So they see that not only is your light unshuttered, you're not bound by certain chains that they have. When they got closer, they could see that you don't have any shackles on, and they feel weighted down. How is it you're walking around without these fetters? And the personality is mostly those fetters. And so it doesn't like that message either. Yet the divine shard seeks that freedom. And it says, so it can step forth into freedom of its own glorious being and be to you its own true self. Not until you can see this soul in all its divine beauty, but now sickened and weakened by this earthly bondage, will it ever be possible for you to find and recognize the ideal you seek. You see their twisted projection, and you're focusing, you are focusing on the specific message that's coming through their projection, instead of focusing on the impersonal love, which is also coming through, and then sending that impersonal love back in a way that helps them to shape their message, their own film strip, so that their divine beauty will shine out, but the film strip is currently twisted, sickened, weakened, It's jammed up in the projector. It's melted at that one spot where it got too hot. It needs repair. Like you, they probably need to refilm, reshoot, rescript. They need to kind of start over, but this was a good sketch because you can see the impersonal love coming through. This is not just what you are experiencing, it's what your mate is experiencing, or the one on the other side of this relationship. They're seeing you the same way that this text is describing. You are the sickened, weakened by this earthly bondage person, this divine shard that's wrapped in a twisted film, and it's not coming through quite right. You're both like this. The text hasn't circled around to the idea that you're both like this yet, but it's implicit. We're all divine shards. We're all walking the spiral. Everybody's path is different, but the pattern of everybody's path is the same. And Elizabeth says you have to be your own self and do your best to bring light to others. That's right. And so this is giving us the idea or the notion that when you feel that anger and that irritation with others, it's a sign to look inside yourself and ensure that you are only projecting back the impersonal love, that you are not sending out your bitterness or irritation or anger or frustration back at the other divine shards. That's not helping them. Unless you are totally aligned and then that frustration is helping you to stay aligned and it helps others. I mean, all emotions can be used in alignment. I think this is talking about the way that most of us typically use these things. And if you're using frustration or anger or irritation in a manner which is misaligning to another, well, it's probably because you were misaligned when you sent it out. That's the signpost. I need to stop and realign. Now, can you do that in an instant? Well, you could, but can you do it in an instant when you're having an interpersonal issue with another? That would be quite a skill. That would be a very great skill. And Elizabeth's saying that we are all the same, but we have different paths. That's correct. But the pattern of everyone's path is always the same. It's not exactly the same, but the patterns are all there. It's like stitching, like when you put together clothing. If you look at a whole bunch of different clothing, there's a lot of similarities and patterns in the way that they're put together. And Cheryl says that some people are gifted as encouragers, and she fails at encouraging. It's not that she doesn't try, she just fails at speaking it out loud. Maybe you don't have to speak it out loud. I think that the idea in the Bible, which Jesus was pushing forth, is that you're going to hold your lantern of faith in your own way. And what's important is that others see the lantern, not the exact way in which you show the lantern. It's the same as the film strip. Doesn't really matter the venue that you show the film strip. It's that the film strip's showing what you need it to show, and it's being shown so that others can see it. And this says, for that ideal exists not without in some other personality, but only within, in your divine counterpart, which is I, your higher immortal self. So the perfection that you're seeking, I think this is saying, the ideal, that is only the divine himself. Your divine shard is perfect, so you do feel a resonance of perfection inside. It's the divine perfection. We're all pieces of the divine. So that ideal, it exists inside you, your divine counterpart, which I call the divine shard. Even though it's you, it's also I, the higher immortal self. It's the piece of unity that is with you all the time. The one that links directly back to unity. And this says, and it is only my idea of this, your perfect self, striving to express and become manifest through your personality, that causes you to see the seeming imperfections in the mate I have given you. So I think that what we're seeing here is we've heard about how creation works, the process of creation, which is the I am gives us inspiration or an idea. He uses both words kind of interchangeably, and then gives us desire, which we pair with the Holy Spirit, and then we, first I messed that up. It's the idea, and then it's the desire. We craft those two together in imagination, where we create the ideal form of something. And notice he's used the word ideal, which is a concept from Plato, from the Greeks. And it's about being able to hold a perfect ideal in your head, in your imagination, but it won't ever match anybody else's ideal of the same thing. Everybody's ideal is different. But you get this ideal, and then you fill that mental construct with the Holy Spirit, and then you're able to manifest a creation. And you are on this spiral of spiritual learning, which is the striving to express. It's also a form of creation because you are manifesting through your personality. It says, become manifest through your personality. So you're trying to, in a way, cast off the shackles of your own personality, but it's more just to truly understand the tool that the personality is. It's not bad. You're not going to throw it away. You're going to put it back on after you come back out of your meditation, your talk with the I am. You don't need it there. No personalities are needed with the impersonal. But you're trying to craft a personality that is more transparent and allowing you to, it's more transparent to the divine attribute that you're trying to project. And because you are involved in this, you perceive imperfections in the mate. Now, again, that mate's not necessarily your spouse. Maybe it's your partner at work. Maybe it's somebody you're playing tennis against. I don't think it's specifically spouse, even though it used soulmate as the name of the chapter, which immediately forces us to think of spouse. But it's saying that your particular perspective on your spiral in this moment brings forth what you see as imperfections in the other, but it's truly imperfections in you. These are reflections of yourself These are instructions for how to clean up your internal issues so that you can better project the divine attribute to these people around you. And Elizabeth says, this chapter has been talking about your partner or your spouse, but what if you don't have one and will not get one? So I think, again, that it's not just spouse. These are all the people that the divine sends to you in your life that you have personal interactions of any kind with. It's just that the mate's being used to make us think of that most personal relationship. And that way we can use it as the model for relationships that are further out. It's trying to attack all of the issues, the greatest issues at once. And all the issues that you would typically have with anyone are probably wrapped up in your spouse somewhere. You've probably had similar kind of issues with them at some point. And Gun's asking, and if children are involved? And so, this is not marriage advice. I would not ever take this chapter as marriage advice. This is Joseph Benner trying to circle around this idea of interpersonal relationships and what they teach you about yourself and how to use that knowledge to go inside yourself and make changes. How to rewrite and reshoot that film strip that you're working on to fulfill the mission. And it also seems to be pointing out that seeming imperfections is a way of saying these others are perfect and it's you that has the issue. Now, that's not a bad thing. It's not saying you're wrong. It's not saying you're immoral. It's not saying you need to fix yourself now. It's saying we're at a point on the spiral and there's more spiral to go. Don't get comfortable and think that you can just sit at this point in the spiral and then point to people that you think are below you in the spiral, that you perceive to be beneath you in the spiral. That's not what the spiral's for. It's for you to achieve as close as you can to your own perfection. Hi, Pat. Thank you for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Gunn says, is it a punishment from God not finding a spouse? As it is God who gives a spouse to us according to yesterday's chapter. Is it a punishment not to get one then? No, I don't believe God punishes you. Jesus does not punish. God does not punish. We punish ourselves. The fog that we create is the punishment. Our misalignment is our own punishment. Our inability to feel alignment is a self-inflicted illusion that we use to punish ourselves. That shame in most instances is a self-inflicted punishment that keeps us from alignment. And so Joseph Benner is trying to show us how to clear that fog so that we can have communion with the I am. But Jesus probably does it better by just saying to believe, to have faith, and if you seek, then he accepts the seeking as alignment. In other words, it doesn't matter where you're facing. Once you call out with sincerity, he turns you so that you are facing the right way. You may still not be able to see him. He does not clear your fog. Only you can clear your fog. So it is definitely not a punishment. God does not punish anyone. Jesus does not punish. He sends you love. We twist that love into punishments. And Cheryl says that she used to think that herself about being punished about a spouse. Cheryl says that we make our own choices. We do make our own choices. But it's hard to make choices when you can't see where you're going. And so that's why the whole book started out with and keeps returning to, be still and know that I am God. And this long, winding way that Joseph Benner has of drawing this out is a form of meditation. It slows the mind. It forces you to circle around the same ideas. It forces you to spend time, which is part of the being still. And then hopefully you're open enough to understand or to be willing to look at what he's saying without all of it sliding over. However, he knows most of it's going to slide over. And this chapter, he wrote kind of specifically, I think, it's a little bit brutal compared to how he's written before. And Pat says, so how do you know where you're going? Well, as long as you're calling out sincerely, even if you can't see, you're going in the right direction. And Elizabeth says, I don't see it as a punishment. I think it is for a reason if we don't have a spouse. That's very hard to know when you don't see where you're going. It absolutely is. So that's where the faith and the lanterns come in. Even though there's fog, you still have your own lantern, so you can see that light. And as long as your light is bright, then you're going in the right direction. That's the promise that Jesus gave you. That if you sincerely seek, he will orient you in the right direction. Let's spiral back out of this book, though, because I have a few other things I want to show before we leave this particular episode. I've got another painting for us to look at. This is another AI painting that I found that they described it as a Cubist Elvis AI painting. I do not believe this is a Cubist painting. I believe this is an AI painting, absolutely. Because if you look at the guitar, the neck is running the wrong way on the guitar and over top of the body, and then his hands are not correct. I don't know when this was made, but AI definitely has gone through issues with extremities and spatial placements of arms and like accessories that go in arms. So I think this is just an AI painting. This is the way it came out. But it's kind of interesting because it does have that Cubist feel to it because of this what I think is an error with the guitar. Although it's art now, so I guess there are no errors. But it is a fairly decent representation of a young Elvis. I thought you guys might enjoy this because his face is fairly clear in this one. And he's got some good looking hair in it. And his coat isn't exactly gold, but it gives you that gold vibe. And Pat says, what happens if you take the wrong path? Well, if you have your lantern of faith, you can't take the wrong path. As long as you've called out to Jesus with sincerity, Now, that's the hard part, right? If you've still got fog and you can't see the way forward, are you being sincere? That's about being still and having that communion. And if you still can't hear and you still can't see, then you've got to have the faith. And Jesus has promised, as long as you have the faith, he's going to orient you in the right direction. And Pat says that this jacket does look like gold. And Cheryl says that she sees it as being out of God's will. We choose our own road, not the path he tells us. And Gunn's asking, what is wrong and what is the right path? Who knows for sure? I don't think there is a right or wrong path. I think Joseph Benner would say, there is no right or wrong path. There is your path. I think Christianity has this metaphor about a straight and narrow path. And it's useful to think about, but it does not encapsulate the Gospels. It's a useful way to think about your own path, that your own path may be very straight and narrow. All of our paths may be very straight and narrow, but they're not the same path. The sheepfold, the door has a funnel because there's many, many paths to the door. Basically an infinite amount. The sheep could go anywhere when it comes out of the sheepfold. Still got to come back in. It could have gone anywhere. It's still got to make it back. If it went on its own way and didn't follow a path out that anybody else blazed, then it's got to come back on its own path. That's not the same path everybody else walks. So your path is the right path. Now I've got another copy of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This copy was owned by Elvis, and it was given to a special friend. And Cheryl says that he is a light unto our path. Forget what verse or book that is. It's been in John quite a bit, actually, that he's been talking about being a light. And I don't know if they use the words unto our path in John that I remember, but he does say light over and over and over. So Elvis gave this book to a special friend. Supposedly, he first received this book from June Wanaco. She claims that she was the first one to give it to him. It was kind of strange because where I found this book, the story was that the belief is that Elvis had read The Prophet after he had joined the military. Well, that would make June Wanaco's story not true. I think that perhaps they hadn't known about June Wanaco's story, which is crazy because if you were going to sell one of these books, you definitely want to connect it to that story. And this was from an auction site. If you notice, there's a symbol on the front of this. So there would have been a dust jacket with this at one point. And we've seen some of them with the dust jacket. That must be gone from this one. I don't know if it was gifted with the jacket or without. But there's a image on the front that's stamped in gold. And it's a gold disc, and where the gold is missing forms a picture, and it's people dancing in the palm of someone's hand. And to me, it almost looks like flames. And I don't know that if I saw this image, I would connect this to a spirituality I would want to read about. It seems a little bit, I almost want to say satanic, but I don't want to say that, but I don't especially appreciate this image. I don't really like it. I do appreciate the artistry of the image. It's a well done image. It's innovative in the way that they've put it on here. I just don't like these writhing bodies in the palm of this, what looks like a woman's hand. But this is the prophet. And inside you can see there's a page that lists the books of Khalil Gibran. So this wasn't the only one he wrote. There's an inscription. And the inscription reads, "To Gary, my thanks for all your years of friendship. May God bless you always. Your friend, Elvis Presley." This Gary is Gary Pepper. So if you've followed the program, you know that I bring Gary Pepper up a lot. I like Gary Pepper. Elvis met him for the very first time, Christmas Eve, 1957. Gary gifted him a very special white leather Bible with Elvis's name embossed on the front. So Gary started the friendship by bringing Elvis a gift of spirituality. We saw that there was a copy of the Impersonal Life that had been gifted to Gary. And its inscription said something about the other book. And we don't know how many books they may have traded back and forth, spiritual books. But Gary, he was a Christian, obviously, from bringing Elvis the Bible. And he connected with him on a spiritual level. Gary was trapped in a wheelchair due to cerebral palsy. Spent his whole life in that wheelchair. And so he had a special tough road to go. It's unclear from the previous annotations that we saw that Elvis had written to Gary in the Impersonal Life, whether Elvis was noting for Gary things that helped Elvis get through hard times, or whether Elvis was responding to Gary about maybe spiritual matters they discussed, or if they were just sharing back and forth things they liked spiritually. Spiritual equals spiritual peers. And Cheryl says, notice how straight that's written across, that it's as if there's lines to write on as a guide, and that she has trouble now that she's older to write without lines. That is a good point. Yesterday, or maybe the day before, I don't know, in one of the past episodes, we saw a letter that was obviously written by a secretary. This is not that kind of handwriting. This cursive writing is, it's not his normal blocky capital letters that he uses for the annotations, but I do believe this is Elvis's personal handwriting, and that he has signed this himself. I think he must have been at a table, because there's no shakiness at all, right? We've seen some sloppiness in some things that he's written that I think were balanced on his knee at the time, or on somebody's back, or like on one of his hands as he tried to sign with the other hand. But here, he's taken the time to write this out. he refers to all your years of friendship. And that might make us think that this was given to Gary. I don't know, he met him in 57, Christmas Eve of 57. So years would indicate sometime after he came back from the army. Now, the notes that came with it, when it was put onto the market, they say that in the back of the book, which they did not show a picture of, that Gary has stamped, that he had a green ink stamp that he would mark items that belonged to him or that Elvis had given him. And he stamped this with that green ink stamp. It says Gary Pepper, 193 Eva Street, Memphis, Tennessee. And also in green ink, Elvis Presley Tankers Fan Club, which was the fan club that Gary ran before Elvis came back from the army. The Eva Street address is also before he moved on to Dolan Street, which would have been sometime in the 1970s. So this is definitely before Dolan Street. My feeling is this was given shortly after Elvis returned from the army, probably like 1960 or 61. And that's because of the Elvis Tankers Fan Club stamp. Now, Gary may have just continued to use that stamp forever, but the fan club itself petered out, and I think it was over by 61 or 62. Gary didn't need to keep that going after Elvis had come back from the army. It was specifically to keep Elvis in the spotlight while he was away. And Big Money Mike says that he believes that it's really Elvis's handwriting. And Gunn points out that he doesn't write just EP, he writes Elvis Presley. Yeah, this is a formal thing. And I think this may be the first book that he gave him like this, that began a spiritual dialogue between them. Now, I do have some of the annotations that we'll look at in future episodes. I think I have 2 or 4 pages worth. So I think maybe we have 4 total annotations, but we'll take a look at them and see if we can't figure out. Like, I'm positive this came before the Impersonal Life. I just feel certain of that. Can't prove it anyway, though. But if he was going to start a conversation with Gary, I think he would have started before he received the Impersonal Life, while he was searching before Larry got there. And Elizabeth says she thinks this is supposed to be special for Gary. Yeah. I think the annotations that are in it are specifically meant for Gary, too. The site that sold it, they, I think, misinterpret this as, like everybody does, if it has annotations, then Elvis Presley personally owned it and it was his copy. I don't think that's true. He owned the copies in the sense he bought them, but he prepared each one for a special person. I think it's very rare that he gave out his working copy. I think there were multiple working copies of some of these books. He just wore them out. And so there are some out there, and they may have been gifted to people, but I think those are the exceptions. But that's where we've got to leave it for today, because we've come to the end of yet another hour. So I'm going to send everybody out of here on a song like I always do. I want to thank everybody for being here today. I appreciate all the time that you spend with me. And Gunn says that she thought he signed EP to his friends and that she misunderstood. Oh, I think he does. He definitely does sign EP to his friends. I just think this is formal. Like dressing up in a suit and tie to go somewhere for a special dinner. This is a special dinner kind of gift. This isn't a quick note. And this was, I think, early on in his spiritual thinking, right? So we do see that EP in things he's given to others. But if this was his first gift to Gary in this kind of thinking, he may have wanted it to be formal. And he wants to show Gary that he really appreciates what Gary's done for him. So it's just that, the way that you might prepare a card for a special occasion, a little nicer than just a thank you note. And so, thank you, everybody. And you all keep on taking care of business. This is Quiet Light.
Beauty walks soft as a whisper, yet thunders like storms overhead. Kind and gentle in its passing, still a thing of might and dread. And the word became a lantern, placed in trembling human hands, saying, "Child, behold my glory, not in faces, but in hearts that understand." For the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome. Every soul receives a lantern, every wanderer is called home. He wrote truth in quiet margins, for the ones who read between. Faith will conquer, said the giver. I am the light you've always seen. Beauty's not the mask we're wearing, not the mirrors feeding grace. Beauty burns within the heart space, kindness casting God's own shadow on the contours of a face. And the I am speaks in stillness, in the breath between each thought. The soul remembers union with the love it never lost. For the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome. Every soul receives a lantern, every wanderer is called home. He wrote truth in quiet margins, for the ones who read between. Faith will conquer, said the giver. I am the light you've always seen. Distance only closes in the moment, when the veil of flesh is torn. Yet the word says I am with you, from the instant you are born. Dreams stay cold, room silent, body, mind and spirit still as one. In that hush the lantern brightens, and the night becomes undone. Be as gentle as the lamb is, when you're dealing out your love. Be as fearless as the lion, when you guard what's holy from above. Let your honor strike like lightning, swift and righteous in its speed. For the light that lives within you is the strength behind the creed. For the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome. Every soul receives a lantern, every seeker finds the one. He wrote truth in quiet margins, as a gift for those in need. Faith will conquer, said the giver. Walk in light and you are free. And the I am whispers softly, as the lantern warms your hand. I am beauty, I am kindness, I am the light